Welcome back to another episode of Mystery Garage.
All right, real talk for a minute. After starting Mystery Garage about a year ago, I've been blessed with starting to build this really cool stable of Mk1 cars. Now, there is one thing I really want to define on this channel, that there's a vast difference between a car that looks cool and looks the part versus a car that drives well and drives the part. And that's something I really want to define on this channel, is the fact that these cars obviously don't really look that great, so that means they need to drive really well. And on this channel, that's exactly what I want, is cars that we can take out, drive hard. And since it is summertime, there's definitely some changes I want to make to at least these two cars right now, because I want to get out there, enjoy these cars in between episodes and have a little bit of fun on it. And I think today's episode will start with the Jetta, because there's some changes to that car that definitely need to be made. So let's get to it. Welcome back to another episode of Mystery Garage. If you're new to the channel, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in Volkswagen content, particularly Mk1 stuff, this is the channel for you. I highly recommend you subscribe to this channel and see lots more of this particular type of content. And just like Stepchild here, these cars that we're building on this channel are here to be driven. And when I talk about the cars and the cars that we have, as we work on them, they're really built about the platform of getting used and driven hard. So that's one thing that we kind of need to work on with definitely the Jetta, and as well as the VR6 project. There's some changes I want to make, and I've mentioned them on this channel before, so it's time to get to work on getting those done today. So first off, in today's episode, we're going to get working on that Jetta, because I really love driving that car, but it definitely needs some changes for me to enjoy it even more. So let's pull some cars, move some cars around, let's get to work. All right, the car's in the shop. Now today is going to be a little bit fun. Not only are these cars filthy from sitting in my stable there, we're going to have a little bit of a play day with every single one of these cars. So I'm not exactly sure which playlist this episode is going to land on, because we're using a lot of these cars all together. Now I do have to admit, this car is extremely filthy, and that's part and parcel because here on the farm, we just got finished doing this. And as I mentioned in my last episode, there's a ton of work to do around here. Turning up all this soil spits up a lot of dust, and unfortunately it lands all over these cars. But to be perfectly honest, that's what we do around here, so I'm not too worried about it. It really only is this time of the year that gets quite this bad. But today's episode, we got all the cars in the stable here. We got the VR6 project, we got Stepchild, all for the reason of making this Jetta a little bit better and more fun to drive. If you watched the episode where I took this car on a cruise, while driving that episode, there was a ton of opportunity for me to learn how this car operates, because it was the first big cruise I ever took this car on, and it definitely highlighted some really important improvements I need to make to this car to really start to enjoy it. One thing is the suspension. This suspension in this car is JOM, and it is trash. It is way too stiff. It bounces around so bad, it literally breaks your neck every time you hit a bump. So we need to make a change on that, and this is where Stepchild comes in. Stepchild today, unfortunately, is going to become a parts car for the benefit of the Jetta, and trust me, it's only temporary, because I'm going to actually make some even better upgrades to Project Stepchild to benefit the Jetta. So what I mean by that is the suspension. The suspension we have waiting for Stepchild. Obviously, Stepchild doesn't need it right now, so we're going to go ahead and throw it on the Jetta. And as a benefit to Stepchild for lending me its suspension, we are going to upgrade to an even better suspension for Stepchild, so don't worry about that. The stuff we have setting up for this is we have the SoloWorks suspension that was for Stepchild. It's now going to be used in the Jetta in today's episode. Also, another big downfall of this is these seats in this car don't dump, and I'm 6'4", and having seats as low or back as far as possible just doesn't cut it. My head still comes pretty close to the ceiling of the car. So that's where the real OG VR6 car comes into play. Inside of this car, I have some GTX 16 valve Recaros, and these seats will go amazingly inside of that Jetta. Now, the one thing here I want you guys to know is we said, or I made the promise to you guys, that this car is going to become, the VR6 is going to become full race spec in the future. So these comfort seats aren't necessarily required in this car anymore. We're going to go full race. So these seats again are going to find themselves sitting inside of that Jetta. Two things before we get started. No, those leaks are not from this car. That's actually from the EA Cabrio that was sitting here. It hasn't ran in so long. When I pulled it into the garage, I realized it's got some leaks. So those leaks will have to get cleaned up, but that's going to be dealt with on the Will It Run episode, which will be fairly shortly to follow this episode, I hope, because I'm just waiting on the airbox parts to come in and we'll get to work on that. The other side of the coin is poor stepchild is going to lose its suspension today that I had waiting and sitting for that car. And I'm pretty excited about this stuff, guys. We have a brand new set of SoloWorks that are going to be going on to this Jetta. All right, so I think we're going to just start with the rears. You know, why not? It's kind of a lemon squash kind of day. We'll make it a little easier on ourselves. We'll start there. I am pretty happy with this ride height. It still does have all the inner wheel wells, the plastics, the trims, that sort of stuff, and it does not rub. So I'm really just kind of going to mirror exactly where it is. I'm not going to dump this car out. I like the aggressive stance it has. It's not super low. It's not super high either. So I'm going to pull out the old suspension. We're just going to compare it with the new stuff, make sure we kind of match it up roughly, and then throw it in the car. So let's get to work.
I came from the mud. There's dirt on my hands. Strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand. Oh, I've been running from the law. Hope they won't shoot me down soon. They sing on a sleepless night. Try to catch me howling at the moon.
All right, there we are. We got the rears all done. Pretty happy with that height. I should have thought about it when I said it, but you can't compare taking off the SoloWorks and then comparing the bodies on the ground between the Joms and the SoloWorks, because they're totally different. Spring rates are different. Body thread sizing is different as far as how much body is below the threads. So there was really nothing to reference too much. Again, because the helper springs and the spring rates being different, no matter what you set at, the SoloWorks was going to be slightly different. So it didn't matter. I just picked a height that I thought would work. I went ahead and threw them in. I did have to adjust them 4 times, but if you're doing it right, that's what's probably going to happen. You're going to want to take the time to put it on the ground, measure it, put it back up in the air, wheels off, adjust, wheels back on, back down, so forth until you get to the perfect height. I think this is good for what the car is at. Some people might say, oh, that's kind of high. It's not really, because it just has that perfect stance to it, and it also doesn't rub on any of the wells. Nothing's rolled. Again, the plastic still remains inside the wheel wells. I'd like to keep it that way, and it does fit the package. The package is kind of aggressive on the car. It looks pretty good. So now that we've done the back, it's time to do the fronts. So let's get to work. All right, there we are. Now I know it's kind of funny considering I put in all that work for the car to look exactly the same, but I can tell you that this is going to be miles better in terms of performance, handling, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, I haven't driven the car yet, but I can tell just by the way that when you by hand bounce the car or try and bounce the car, the way the car responds is vastly different than they did on these Joms. Now, let me show you what I mean. So these are obviously the rears. When the spring rate is soft and you need to preload the spring to be able to get it to hold the car up high enough, like I have right now with the way this car is set up, I had to preload so much that the tension on this spring is so incredibly firm that anytime you hit a bump, it's like, So it's just so tight that it literally breaks your neck every time. And that's particularly important for the rears. You can see the helper springs are just completely jammed up. And then I've even forced the spring tight enough just to get that ride height I need. And I'm not asking for even factory height. I was just asking for something a little more than absolutely slammed. So when you're going for not lower, but you're going to try and keep the car up higher, you run into issues where the spring rate is just, it's not even usable at that point. So these are obviously write-offs for anybody who wants to ride like we did in the 90s or early 90s, late 80s. You can definitely take these off my hands. I am done with these. And the fronts, you know, the fronts were okay, not terrible, but again, same thing, more or less. You can see how the helper springs are a little bit loosened up. That's because the nuts obviously backed off quite a bit, but they were similar to these before. Anyway, now the car is back to looking fantastic. It still is dirty, so it needs to be cleaned up. But next up on the list is to take care of those seats. Having my head so high in that car, it's just so uncomfortable. And like I said, the RECAROs from the VR6 car aren't necessary to remain in the VR6, so we'll go ahead and throw them in the Jetta. Let's get to work. Poor VR6. All in good time though. We're gonna get some cool racing seats put in this car, and definitely get rid of the back seats, do some deletes, all that kind of thing, because like I said, this will become a race car. So for now, we'll close it up. We're done with this car. On to the RECAROs. Now, a long time ago, I should say that I modified the bases, and I forget exactly what I did. It was quite a long time ago. I ended up flipping, what did I do here? Did I flip this? I forget. Yeah, I think I flipped this. I think you have to flip this bar for a Mark 1 versus a Mark 2. Can't remember exactly what I did, but these are the part power seats. So I actually have them set down to its lowest. So we'll go ahead and prep these seats up. I still do have the rears. I don't think, I'm 99% sure they won't work in a Mark 1 the way they are, but these are the rear seats. Would be really cool if I could throw those in this car as well, but maybe down the road we'll make some adjustments and see if we couldn't get it squished in there. If any of you guys in the comment section have done something like that before, where you put Mark 2 seats in a Mark 1 or modified them to do such a thing, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know. But for now, we'll stick with just these fronts, get them in this Jetta, and soon be able to fit properly. I really do love these seats, so let's get them in. Oh yes, what a difference. I love these seats. They're truly one of probably the best interior modifications / changes you can do to a Mark 1 is throwing some RECARO seats in it, because man, does it ever make a big difference. It's not that there's anything wrong with these seats, it's just that there's a significantly different vibe. You can see the bolsters on these seats, relatively a flat seat. The bottom basically has nothing to give, whereas the bolsters on this seat are massive. So are the bottom ones. This one's a little bit slightly tired, but not terrible. But you can see what a difference it makes. Comfort, fit, the fact that the bottom drops. Now they kind of call this, in the early stages of Mark 1s and Mark 2s, they call them sport seats, where the bottom is able to dump, is what I referred to in this seat. You can see in these seats, which are not sport seats, these rear seat legs are fixed. You can see in sport seats, this situation is this track is actually hinged on a bracket that allows the seat to move up and down, so basically dump the butt part of the seat. In my EA Cabrio, it came with a driver's side front sport seat, but the passenger side unfortunately is not sport. That's just the way they came. So again, it's for driver comfort, driver fitment. These seats for me don't really work. Being a tall guy, all you have is the choice to go, 90s gangster and go way back, and that's just not my style. So with these seats, you're able to move that butt down low, which gives you really good fitment. Not only that, these seats look fantastic in this car. It actually goes together really well. with the whole interior package. Okay, so with all that work done now, where does that leave us on the Jetta? Well, we have to take this thing for a test drive. I have to know that the suspension works better. We do have a couple other things to do, but we're gonna leave it for a different day. I still need to change out these front headlights with the Euro items I have somewhere back on the shelves there. We also do need to do a rear bumper tuck still. We need to deal with this massive amount of acreage back here. Also do have a little bit of side droop. I can imagine either it's come unclipped or the clip has broke. I haven't looked into it too much, but we'll deal with all that in the same episode. And then I'd like to start prepping up the trim with trim paint is due. Obviously that trim around the wheel arches and trim down the side and kind of freshen all that up. Door handles, mirrors, that sort of thing. And just kind of start to treat a lot of the little things. Even on this side, you can see, you know, handle gaskets and stuff need to be done. I'll do that as well. But again, the main focus right now isn't on appearance of the car or aesthetics. It's about drivability. I want this car to drive and handle as it should before we start really spending too much time getting back onto the aesthetics of the car. I have to admit the last few episodes have been a lot of fun. I feel like a couple episodes ago, we just got into a whole bunch of talking episodes. These last few episodes have been getting back down to work, and that's where I truly enjoy this YouTube stuff, is really getting out to work on these cars and having fun with them. You know, I do like the talking and interacting and stuff, but getting to work is my favorite part about everything to do with this channel. So these last couple episodes have really been almost rejuvenating and having fun, and that is the whole point of this channel, guys. Get out to your garage, work on your project cars, have fun, you know, enjoy this hobby. That is really the whole point of us doing all of this stuff, myself included. All right, so let's move all these cars around and get this car outside.
She want me to lock it down, but I told her to pass the key. You gotta slow it down, girl, you moving too fast for me. Nobody did it like this, so they wonder, they asking me if I can slow it down, cause it's coming too fast for me. Like I live in the cockpit, mess around with the money, get drop kick. Only one in the city to pop quick. Never cared about being your top team. Got a house in the hills, can you top this? I came from where the boys leave you topless. It get crazy around here in my section. All of my ops get to stepping. Know how long I had prayed for these blessings. Took my L's and turned them to lessons. I go take it, I'm not in the begging. If I'm breaking bread, it's only with the brethren. I need the tops, that's where I'm headed. Yeah, she want me to lock it down, but I told her to pass the key. You gotta slow it down, girl, you moving too fast for me. Nobody did it like this, so they wanted to asking me if I can slow it down, cause it's coming too fast for me. I came up from the bottom, now look at me now, they mad at me. I cannot slow it down, cause it's coming too fast for me. Nobody did it like this, so they wonder, they asking me if I can slow it down, cause it's coming too fast for me. Yeah, ooh, I'm moving faster than lightning. I can't close on my eyes, too excited. It's the fruit of what you get for trying. Don't be selling no more, I'm just buying. I got two of everything that you eyeing. Put my boots on and turn to a giant. This is fact, ain't no fictional writing. If I want to, I go right into hiding. Me and my lady somewhere on the island. I came up in a war zone where it's violent. Either end up a victim or a tyrant. Nobody did it like this, nobody ever. Told myself it would get better. Wrote it and meant every letter. Now we flood the city, it's never been wetter.
Wow, what a difference that made, and I am seriously impressed. Now, I have nothing to do with SOLIDWORKS in the slightest. I expected, you know, a better ride than these crappy Joms, but I am seriously impressed of how well this car rides. Yeah, there's a little bit of adjustment needed. I think I started to rub a little bit in the rear of this car, so we need to raise it up just a hair, just to get it off those fender wells when it goes into deep bumps and that sort of thing. But oh my, was that ever a lot more than I expected. So I don't know, the combination of the steering wheel, the seats, the golf ball shift knob, all that kind of thing, they just work. It really just works, and I'm really impressed. I love this car, and it's growing on me every single time I get into it, and today alone, huge change. Just look at this thing, it's so good. Everything about it. I mean, it's just, I'm just falling in love with it every single time I drive it. It is just such a good car, and these seats work so well in it. Well, that about does it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I had a ton of fun getting to work on this car, and again, like I said, wow, am I ever impressed with the changes we made. And that's exactly what this car is used for. It needs to be driven, and that's exactly the kind of changes we made today. It just makes the driving experience that much better. And I'm really looking forward to doing that on all the cars we have in the shop, as well as getting back to work on Project Stepchild in the coming weeks. So still waiting on that airbox for the EA project, and I hope to bring that back to doing a Will It Start video again in the coming episodes, as well as getting to work on the VR6. So again, little loose ends there I want to work on and get things dialed in. But thank you very much for watching. Again, if this type of content is something you really enjoy, I highly recommend you subscribe to this channel. I really would appreciate it. Until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. Take care.